The maid's fingers dug into my arm like claws. Her eyes were wild, darting between me and the massive white colonial behind her. December wind whipped her black uniform against her legs as she pulled me away from the front door. "Mrs. Callaway!" Her voice cracked. "Don't go in. Leave now immediately." I stared at her, my hand still clutching the cashmere scarf I'd spent an hour wrapping in silver paper. The bow was perfect. I'd made it perfect for Desmond, my son, my only child who hadn't spoken to me in 12 months until 3 days ago when he'd finally called. Hi, viewers, kindly tell us where you're watching from and what time it is. What? The word came out confused, distant. I don't understand. My son invited me for Christmas dinner. I'm supposed to. Please. She glanced back at the house again. Through the floor to ceiling windows, I could see golden lights spilling across marble floors. A Christmas tree stood in the entrance hall, at least 15 ft tall, covered in white lights and silver ornaments. I could lose my job for this, but I can't let you walk in there, get in your car, drive away, don't come back. My knees felt weak. I was Beatrice Callaway, 73 years old, and I'd driven 2 hours from my apartment in Bridgeport to this mansion in Greenwich, Connecticut. For a year, Desmond hadn't answered my calls, hadn't responded to my letters, hadn't acknowledged my birthday or Thanksgiving, or the 50 voicemails I'd left begging him to tell me what I'd done wrong. Then last Tuesday, his voice on my phone, flat cold. "Come for Christmas dinner, Mother. Saturday at 6:00. This woman was telling me to leave. Is Desmond okay?" My voice shook. Is he hurt? Is something wrong with... He's fine. Her accent was thick. Hispanic, maybe. Her name tag read an ease. "But you're not safe here. Trust me, I have a mother too. I couldn't live with myself if I didn't warn you." Behind her, a shadow moved across the hallway window. Tall male, my breath caught. Go. In's eyes filled with tears. Poor Favor. Just go. I stumbled backward. My heel caught on the edge of the driveway and I nearly fell, catching myself against the hood of my 10-year-old Camry. The car looked tiny, shabby next to the circular fountain in the center of Desmond's driveway. Next to this house that probably cost more than I'd earned in my entire nursing career. In was already moving back toward the side door, moving fast, her sensible shoes crunching on the gravel. She disappeared inside. I stood there, frozen cold air burned my lungs. My fingers had gone numb around my car keys, and I realized I'd been clutching them so hard the metal had cut into my palm. A thin line of blood welled up bright red against my pale skin. Move, I told myself. Move. I yanked open the car door and threw myself inside. My hands were shaking so badly I dropped the keys on the floorboard. Had to bend down, scrabbling in the dark under the brake pedal. My breath coming in short gasps that fogged the windshield. Found them. Jammed the key into the ignition. The engine started with a rattling cough. I threw it into reverse and hit the gas too hard. Tires squealed. Gravel sprayed. In my rearview mirror, the mansion stayed lit and perfect and beautiful. No one came running out. No one stopped me. I made it to the end of the long private driveway and pulled onto the shoulder of the main road. Couldn't drive further, couldn't think. My whole body was shaking now, trembling so hard my teeth chattered. The wrapped gift sat on the passenger seat. Silver paper perfect bow. I'd bought that scarf 3 weeks ago at Macy's. Spent money I really didn't have because it was cashmere and Desmond deserved the best. I always gave him the best, even when the best meant working double shifts at Hartford General. My feet swelling in my nursing shoes until I could barely walk. Even when it meant eating ramen for dinner so we could have piano lessons, even when it meant taking out loans I'd only finished paying off last year so he could go to Yale. My phone was in my purse. I should call him Demand to know what was happening, why his maid had looked at me with such fear, why she'd begged me to leave but my hands wouldn't stop shaking. I sat there with the engine running, heat blasting from the vents, and tried to breathe. Just breathe. In through the nose, out through the mouth, like I used to tell panicked patients in the ER. You're okay. You're safe. Nothing happened except something had almost happened. Something bad enough to make a woman risk her job to warn me. 5 minutes passed, maybe 6. My breathing was finally starting to slow when my phone rang. The sound was so sudden, so loud in the quiet car that I jumped and cracked my head against the roof. Pain exploded across my skull. I grabbed the phone with trembling fingers. Unknown number. I almost didn't answer. Almost let it go to voicemail. But what if it was Desmond? What if he'd seen me leave and was calling to explain hello? My voice came out small and scared. Mrs. Callaway. A man's voice. Deep professional. This is Detective Marcus Reeves with Greenwich Police Department. Are you currently in the vicinity of 847 Lakeshore Drive? The world tilted. That was Desmond's address. My son's address. I was just there. I managed. I left. What's wrong is my son. Ma'am, I need you to stay exactly where you are. Don't return to that address under any circumstances. Can you tell me your current location? I'm pulled over on Lakeshore, maybe a quarter mile from the house, near the main intersection. Detective, what's happening? Is Desmond hurt? Did something? Your son is being taken into custody as we speak. Mrs. Callaway. His voice was careful, measured like he was choosing every word. I need to ask you something very important. When you arrived at the residence today, did you go inside the house? No. My vision was going dark around the edges. The maid stopped me. She told me to leave. She seemed scared. I don't understand what the maid saved your life, ma'am. Everything stopped. My heart, my breath. Time itself seemed to freeze in that moment. Those 5 words hanging in the cold air of my car. What we've been conducting surveillance on your son for 3 weeks, Mrs. Callaway. We have substantial evidence that he and his wife were planning to poison you today. The intention was to make it appear to be a heart attack. You're elderly. You have documented cardiac issues. They would have called 911, played the role of devastated family members, and inherited your assets without raising any suspicion. I couldn't breathe, couldn't process what he was saying. The words made no sense. Poison, murder, Desmond. My Desmond, who I'd rocked through nightmares when he was 3, who'd cried in my arms when his goldfish died, who'd hugged me so tight when he got into Yale that I couldn't breathe. There must be a mistake. The words came out in a whisper. Why would he do that? I don't have any assets. I live on a pension. There's nothing to inherit, nothing worth. Ma'am, are you aware that your late husband had a life insurance policy through his employer? But Gerald, my Gerald, who died 40 years ago, clutching his chest in our tiny kitchen while 8-year-old Desmond watched from the doorway. The insurance had paid out $20,000, barely enough for the funeral and 6 months of bills while I found work. That money is long gone, I said. It's what kept us alive after he died. There was a second policy, Mrs. Callaway, a substantially larger one. The paperwork was mishandled during a corporate restructuring in the 1980s. It's been tied up in legal proceedings for decades. The settlement finally cleared probate last month. The payout is $2.3 million, and you're the sole beneficiary. The phone slipped from my fingers, landed on my lap. $2.3 million. The number was so big it didn't feel real. Couldn't be real. I picked the phone back up. I never received any notification. No one contacted me about. They did. Multiple letters were sent to your address over the past year. We have copies from the insurance company's records. But your son has been intercepting your mail for approximately 14 months since he first learned about the policy through professional connections at his hedge fund. He's had access to your mailbox this entire time. Mrs. Callaway, that's why you never knew. The year of silence suddenly made horrible, perfect sense. Desmond hadn't stopped calling because I'd done something wrong, hadn't abandoned me because he was busy or stressed or tired of dealing with his aging mother. He'd cut me off because I was worth more to him dead than alive. My stomach lurched. I fumbled with the door handle, got it open just in time. I vomited onto the frozen grass, my whole body heaving. Nothing came up but bile and coffee. I hadn't eaten since yesterday. Too nervous about seeing Desmond to keep anything down. Mrs. Callaway. The detective's voice was tiny, distant. Are you there? I wiped my mouth with the back of my hand and pulled the door closed. I'm here. I know this is difficult. I need you to understand something. This wasn't a spontaneous decision. We have evidence of extensive planning, internet searches about untraceable poisons, purchases made through encrypted channels, text messages between your son and his wife discussing the specific method. They researched your medical history, Mrs. Callaway. They knew you take medication for your heart condition. They planned to give you a digitalis overdose that would interact with your regular medication. It would have looked completely natural. I stared at the dashboard at the check engine light that had been on for 6 months because I couldn't afford to fix it, at the crack in the windshield from a rock that hit me on the highway last summer, at my life small and shabby and apparently worth $2.3 million to kill the maid. I heard myself say, "Is she in trouble?" Rodriguez is being placed in protective custody and will receive witness protection. She came to us 2 weeks ago when she overheard them discussing the plan. She's been wearing a wire since then, recording conversations. Without her courage, we wouldn't have enough evidence for an arrest. She quite literally saved your life, Mrs. Callaway. I thought of her face, the tears in her eyes. I have a mother, too. A woman who'd probably immigrated here for a better life, who cleaned rich people's houses for minimum wage, who'd risked everything to save a stranger while my own son had planned my murder for money. Mrs. Callaway, I'm sending a patrol unit to escort you to the station. We need your statement. I'm also going to recommend you speak with an attorney immediately, both about pressing charges and about protecting your inheritance. Do you understand? Yes, though I understood nothing. How do you understand your child trying to kill you? Through the bare winter trees, I could just see the roof of Desmond's mansion. Red and blue lights flash now, reflecting off the white columns. Police cars in the circular driveway where I'd parked just minutes ago, where I'd almost died. I'd raised Desmond alone after Gerald died, worked until my hands went numb and my feet bled, sacrificed everything, every dream, every want, every moment of rest or joy or peace for him, always for him. I'd believed that love, real, unconditional mother's love, was the most powerful force in the world. I'd been wrong. My phone buzzed with a text from an unknown number. I opened it with shaking fingers. This isn't Ease. I'm sorry. I couldn't let him hurt you. My mother raised me alone, too. She taught me right from wrong. I hope your son rots in prison. I saved the number. Then I read the message again and again until the words blurred. A police cruiser pulled up behind me, lights flashing. A young officer got out, maybe 30, with kind eyes. He tapped on my window and I lowered it. Mrs. Callaway, I'm Officer Phillips. Detective Reeves asked me to escort you to the station. Are you able to drive, or would you prefer to ride with me? I can drive. My voice sounded strange, hollow. Follow me then, ma'am, and Mrs. Callaway. He paused. I'm glad you're safe. What you did, listening to that warning and leaving, that took real courage. Courage as if I'd done something brave instead of just surviving. I followed his cruiser back toward town, past houses decorated for Christmas, past families visible through lit windows gathered around trees and tables. Normal people having normal holidays, not people whose children had tried to poison them. At a stoplight, I caught my reflection in the rearview mirror. Silver hair, wild lipstick, smeared eyes, red from crying. I looked old, ancient, but my eyes were different now, harder. Something had broken in me when Detective Reeves said those words. Planned to poison you, but something else had formed too. Cold and clear and sharp as broken glass. I'd spent a year hating myself, wondering what I'd done to lose my son's love, believing I'd failed him somehow. Now I knew the truth. I hadn't lost his love. He'd never loved me at all. Not really. Or if he had, it was so shallow that 2.3 million could drown it completely. The light turned green. I pressed the gas and followed Officer Phillips through the quiet streets toward the police station, where I would tell my story, where I would make them understand what almost happened. And later, after the lawyers and trials and media coverage, I would figure out what to do with the money that nearly killed me. The money Desmond wanted so badly he'd been willing to commit murder. The money that could buy something I'd never imagined needing. Not security, not comfort, not things justice. 13 months ago, everything was still normal, or what passed for normal, between Desmond and me. I'd driven down to Greenwich on Christmas Eve morning, my Camry packed with gifts I'd wrapped carefully in his favorite colors. Blue and silver, elegant, expensive looking, even though they'd come from discount stores. Desmond's house had been decorated like a magazine spread. Sloane had answered the door in a cream cashmere dress that probably cost more than my monthly rent. She'd smiled, but her eyes had been cold. "Beatrice, you're early. Not mom, never mom." Sloane had made it clear from the beginning that she wasn't interested in a mother-in-law relationship. I was Beatrice, a formality to be endured. "I wanted to help with dinner," I'd said, holding up the green bean casserole I'd made. "My mother's recipe, the one Desmond had loved as a child. We have caterers." Sloane had taken the dish anyway, holding it at arm's length like it might contaminate her. "But thank you." Desmond had appeared in the hallway behind her. 45 years old, tall and lame in expensive casual clothes. His dark hair had started going gray at the temples. It made him look distinguished, powerful. He'd looked nothing like the boy who used to climb into my bed during thunderstorms. Mother. He'd kissed my cheek, a brief press of lips that held no warmth. "Merry Christmas. Merry Christmas, sweetheart." I tried to hug him, but he'd already turned away. That had been the last time I'd seen him, the last time I'd heard his voice in person. We'd eaten dinner at a table that sat 12, just the three of us spread out like strangers. The caterers had served course after course of food I didn't recognize. Sloane had talked about their upcoming trip to Aspen. Desmond had checked his phone between every course I'd asked about his work, about their plans for New Year's, about whether they were still trying for a baby. Short answers, polite, distant. When I'd left that night, Desmond had walked me to my car. The temperature had dropped and I hadn't brought a warm enough coat. "Drive safely," he'd said. "I will. Thank you for having me. Maybe next month we could. I'll call you." He never did. The first week of January, I'd called him. Voicemail. I'd left a message thanking him for Christmas, asking how Aspen had been. No response. Second week, I'd called again and again. Every call went to voicemail. I'd send a text, then an email, then a letter, actual paper and stamp, because maybe he wasn't getting the electronic messages somehow. The letter came back, marked "Return to Sender." By February, I was frantic. I'd called his office, got his assistant. "I'm sorry Mr. Callaway is unavailable. Can I take a message?" "This is his mother. I need to speak with him. It's important. I'll let him know you called." He never called back. March. I'd driven to Greenwich, parked outside his office building, and waited for 3 hours until I saw him leave. I'd called his name, waved. He'd looked right at me, then gotten into a car service and driven away. That was when I'd known this wasn't an accident. He was deliberately avoiding me. I'd spent April crying, May in denial, June convinced it was my fault. What had I done? Said something wrong at Christmas, being too clingy, not grateful enough. I'd replayed every conversation, every moment, searching for the mistake. By July, I was calling every week, leaving messages that got increasingly desperate. Desmond, please. Whatever I did, I'm sorry. Just tell me what's wrong. Let me fix it. August. I miss you. I just want to hear your voice. Please call me back. September, I'm worried about you. If something's wrong, if you're in trouble, I can help. Please let me help. That September message would later be played in court. Evidence that I'd reached out repeatedly. Evidence that I'd had no idea what he was planning. By October, my friends at church had started giving me pitiful looks. Still haven't heard from him. They'd ask, voices dripping with sympathy that felt like acid. He's busy, I'd say. Hedge fund managers work long hours, but I'd stopped believing it. November, I'd send a Thanksgiving card. No response. Early December, I'd sent a Christmas card. Told myself this was it. If he didn't respond to Christmas, I'd stop trying. I'd accept that I'd somehow lost my son and would never know why. Then December 15th, my phone had rung. Unknown number, but I'd answered anyway, hoping. Mother, his voice flat and cold, but his voice, I'm calling about Christmas. My heart had nearly exploded. Desmond. Oh God, I've been so worried. I've called, and I thought maybe something was wrong. And I come for Christmas dinner. Saturday, December 23rd, 6:00 p.m. I'd love to, thank you. I've missed you so much. Can we talk? I need to understand what happened. Why youth 6:00 p.m.? Don't be late. He'd hung up. I'd stared at the phone, hands shaking. It hadn't been warm, hadn't been an apology or explanation, but it was contact. After 12 months of silence, he was inviting me back into his life. I'd cried for an hour, relief and joy and desperate hope. I should have known better. I should have questioned why now, why after all this time, why so suddenly with no explanation. But I'd wanted to believe, needed to believe that my son still loved me somewhere under all that coldness. So I'd bought the cashmere scarf, wrapped it perfectly driven 2 hours in December, cold to a house where my own child had planned to murder me. If I'd gone inside, I'd be dead now. The thought hit me as I sat in the police station parking lot. Officer Phillips waiting patiently beside his cruiser. I'd be dead, and Desmond would be planning my funeral, picking out flowers, writing a eulogy about his beloved mother who'd raised him alone, who sacrificed everything, who tragically died of a heart attack at his Christmas table. He probably already had the speech written. I got out of my car on legs that barely held me and followed Officer Phillips inside. The station was warm and bright and smelled like burnt coffee and industrial cleaner. Phillips led me to an interview room, small and windowless, with a metal table and 3 chairs. Detective Reeves was already there, standing when I entered. He was older than his voice had suggested, maybe 60, with gray hair and tired eyes that had seen too much. He shook my hand. Mrs. Callaway, thank you for coming in. I know this is incredibly difficult. Please sit down. I said the chair was cold metal, uncomfortable. Good. The discomfort kept me focused, kept me from disappearing into shock. Detective Reeves sat across from me. Officer Phillips stood by the door. I need to walk you through what we know Reeves said. And I need to warn you, some of this will be very hard to hear. If you need a break at any time, just say so. I want to know everything. My voice came out stronger than I expected. All of it. He opened a folder on the table. We began investigating your son 3 weeks ago, based on information provided by Anise Rodriguez, who's employed as a housekeeper in his home. She came to us on December 1st after overhearing a conversation between Desmond and his wife Sloan. He slid a piece of paper across the table, a transcript. Sloan, so we're really doing this Saturday. Desmond, it's the perfect opportunity. Christmas dinner, family gathering, she has a heart condition, takes medication. An overdose would look completely natural. Sloan, what if someone questions it? Desmond, she has no other family, no close friends. She's a lonely old woman who worked too hard her whole life. Heart attacks happen. Sloan, and you're sure about the money? Desmond, $2.3 million. Cleared probate last month. As soon as she's declared dead, it transfers to me as next of kin. I read it twice, 3 times. The words made sense individually, but together they created something my brain refused to accept. That's really him, I whispered. Really my son. It's really him. In was in the next room, heard everything. She was terrified but smart. She used her phone to record subsequent conversations, then brought them to us. We obtained a warrant for electronic surveillance and have been monitoring the house since December 3rd. He pulled out more papers, printouts of text messages. Desmond to Sloan stopped at the pharmacy. Got what we need. She won't feel a thing. Sloan to Desmond. I'm practicing my crying. Need to look devastated when the ambulance comes. Think you can pull off the grieving son, Desmond to Sloan? I've been playing that roddle my whole life. That last message hit like a physical blow. My whole life, the grieving son, the grateful son, the loving son. It had all been an act. How long, I heard myself ask, how long has he been planning this? Based on our investigation, he learned about the insurance policy in October of last year through connections at his firm. Someone in the legal department handling the probate. He immediately began distancing himself from you, establishing a pattern of separation. Makes it less suspicious when you suddenly appear for Christmas and die. October 13th months ago, right when the silence started. He's been planning my death for over a year. Yes, ma'am. Detective Reeves pulled out more documents. Computer printouts showing internet searches from Desmond's personal laptop. Untraceable poisons, heart attack symptoms, how to fake grief, inheritance laws, Connecticut, time frame for insurance payout after death. My vision blurred. I gripped the edge of the table to keep from sliding off the chair. There's more, Reeves said quietly, and this is the hardest part. Your son's first wife. First wife, I looked up at him. Desmond was never married before Sloan. I would know if her name was Caroline Brennan's. They were married 15 years ago when your son was 30. The marriage lasted approximately 2 years. Caroline died of what was ruled an accidental drug overdose in her home. The room spun. I never knew. He never told me. Why wouldn't he tell me he was married? Because Caroline had a life insurance policy worth $500,000. Your son was the sole beneficiary. The payout went through without issue because the death was ruled accidental. But Caroline's family always suspected foul play. They pushed for investigation, but there wasn't enough evidence. The case was closed. He slid another photo across the table. A young woman, maybe 28, with auburn hair and a bright smile. Caroline Brennan, the first wife. I never knew about the first person Desmond had killed for money. After Caroline's death, your son waited 6 months and then met Sloan, who comes from a wealthy family. They married quickly, but Sloan's family money is tied up in trust she can't access until she's 50. Your son has been living beyond his means, taking risks at his firm, making bad investments. He needs cash, Mrs. Callaway. And when he found out about your inheritance, you became his solution. I couldn't speak, couldn't process it. This wasn't my son, couldn't be my son. The boy who'd cried when his hamster died couldn't possibly have murdered his first wife and then planned to murder his mother. But the evidence was right there in front of me. Texts and searches and recorded conversations. The truth in cold, hard data. Caroline's family I managed. Do they know we contacted them this morning? They're devastated but grateful. This gives them closure. Justice, finally. The door opened. A woman entered. Hispanic, maybe 45, wearing regular clothes now instead of a uniform. Her eyes met mine and filled with tears. In ease, she crossed the room and took the chair beside me. Mrs. Callaway, I'm so sorry. I'm so sorry for what he did, for what he tried to do. I grabbed her hand. You saved my life. You risked everything to save me. I couldn't let him hurt you. She was crying now. tears streaming down her face. I saw your photo in his office. You looked like my mother. She raised me alone, too. Worked so hard. When I heard them planning, I thought about her about what if someone tried to hurt her. I couldn't stay silent. We sat there holding hands. Two women who'd never met before, connected by one monster and one moment of courage. Detective Reeves cleared his throat. Mrs. Rodriguez has agreed to testify. With her evidence and our surveillance, we have a strong case. Your son and his wife are being charged with conspiracy to commit murder. If convicted, they're looking at 15 to 20 years minimum. Will Anise be safe? I asked. He has money connections if he thinks she's in protective custody starting tonight. New identity relocation assistance, full witness protection. She's being taken care of. And squeezed my hand. It's okay. I knew the risks. Some things are worth risking everything for, like making sure monsters don't win. I looked at this woman who'd given up her entire life to save mine. A stranger who'd shown me more love in one moment than my own son had in 45 years. Thank you, I whispered. I don't know how to thank you enough. You're alive. That's enough. Detective Reeves stood. Mrs. Callaway, there's someone else here who needs to speak with you. Your son's attorney will be handling the criminal defense, but you need your own representation. The court appointed a lawyer to help you with the inheritance issues. He's waiting in the next room. I nodded in ease, released my hand, and stood explaining the legal process, the timeline, the steps ahead. I listened with half my attention. The other half was still stuck on that transcript, that text message. I've been playing that role my whole life. My son had never loved me. Every hug, every I love you, every Mother's Day card, all of it had been performance manipulation, keeping me attached so he'd have access when he needed something. And when I became worth more dead than alive, he decided to cash in. But he'd made one mistake, one miscalculation in all his careful planning. And Rodriguez had a conscience, and $2.3 million wasn't enough to silence it. My phone buzzed. A text from another unknown number. Drop the charges or I tell everyone what you really are. I have dirt on you. On. Don't test me. Desmond from jail threatening me. I showed it to Chen, his face darkened. That's witness intimidation. Prosecutable. He pulled out his own phone. I'm sending this to Detective Reeves immediately. This just made things worse for him. Let it, I said. Let him dig his grave deeper. Within an hour, Detective Reeves called to tell me Desmond's bail had been revoked. He was back in custody. Phone privileges suspended. He's panicking, Reeves said. Panicking people make mistakes. This is good for our case. Good. Everything was good for the case, good for justice, good for everyone except Desmond. Exactly as it should be. Chen drove me back to my apartment in Bridgeport, the tiny one-bedroom where I'd lived for 30 years, where I'd raised Desmond alone, where I'd collapsed into bed every night, too exhausted to do anything but sleep and wake up and do it all again. He walked me to the door. Are you going to be okay alone tonight? I can arrange for someone too. I'm fine. I unlocked the door. I've been alone for a long time. I'm used to it. He left. I went inside and locked the door behind me. The apartment was exactly as I'd left it this morning. A lifetime ago, before I knew my son was a murderer, before everything changed. I looked around at my simple life. Thrift store furniture, faded wallpaper I couldn't afford to replace. The TV I'd bought used 10 years ago. This was the home I'd made on a nurse's pension. Modest, clean, honest. What secrets could I possibly have that Desmond could expose? Then I laughed, bitter and sharp. It didn't matter. He was going to lie, make things up, try to destroy me the way he tried to kill me. Let him try. I had truth on my side, and apparently I had $2.3 million. The next week blurred past in a haze of meetings with lawyers and prosecutors and victim advocates. The media got hold of the story and suddenly reporters were camped outside my building. Mrs. Callaway, how do you feel about your son trying to kill you? Do you plan to testify against him? Will you keep the inheritance money? I kept my head down and didn't answer. Let them speculate. I had nothing to say to strangers. But my former colleagues from Hartford General, they rallied around me. Nurses I'd worked with for 30 years who knew me, who'd seen me raise Desmond alone. They called and visited and brought food I couldn't eat. We always thought something was off about that boy, one said. Too smooth, too cold. You did your best, B. Another told me some people are just born wrong. Was that true? Had Desmond been born this way, or had I failed to raise him right? I'd worked so much, left him alone so much. Maybe if I'd been home more, been softer, been different. No, I stopped that thought cold. I'd done my best with what I had. Some people choose darkness no matter how much light you give them. The trial was set for February 6th, weeks away. The prosecutor, a sharp woman named Elizabeth Park, coached me on testimony. Keep your answers short. Stick to facts. Don't let the defense provoke you emotionally. We did mock cross-examinations. Defense attorney Jacob Stern playing his role was brutal. Isn't it true you resented your son's wealth, Mrs. Callaway? No, you were jealous of his success, his beautiful home, his wife from a prominent family. No, you felt he'd abandoned you, and this is your revenge. No, he tried to kill me. That's not revenge, it's truth. Or is it a bitter old woman's fantasy, a way to punish the son who outgrew her? That one hit hard. I felt tears prick my eyes. Elizabeth held up a hand. See, that's what they'll do. They'll try to make you cry, make you look unstable. You need to stay calm, cold, even like ice. Like ice. I practiced that. Practice keeping my face neutral, my voice steady, my emotions locked down tight. Becoming steel. The night before the trial, I couldn't sleep. I got up at 3:00 a.m. and made tea. I didn't drink. Sat at my kitchen table and looked through old photo albums. Baby Desmond fat and happy. Toddler Desmond grinning with his first tooth missing. Boy Desmond in his Little League uniform. Teen Desmond at his high school graduation. Where had that child gone? When had he become someone who could plan a murder? Or had he always been this person and I just refused to see it? I flipped to the very back of the album, the last photos I had of us together. Thanksgiving 2 years ago. Desmond's face was blank in every shot. No smile, no warmth. Like he was tolerating my presence, counting the minutes until I left. I told myself he was stressed. Tired, busy. The truth had been right there in his eyes, and I'd refused to see it. I closed the album and went to my bedroom, laid out the clothes Elizabeth had helped me pick for court. Navy blue dress, modest but neat, pearl earrings, low heels. I'd look like what I was, a retired nurse, a mother, someone's grandmother if things had gone differently. Not a victim, not weak, just truthful. I finally fell asleep around 5 and woke at 7 to my alarm. Showered, dressed, ate nothing because my stomach was churning. Elizabeth picked me up at 8:30. We drove to the courthouse in silence. "You're going to do great," she said as we pulled into the parking garage. "Just remember everything we practiced." The courthouse was packed. Media spectators, curious strangers who'd read about the case. I walked through them with Elizabeth at my side, ignoring the shouted questions and camera flashes. Inside, she led me to a private waiting room. The trial starts at 9:00. Opening statements first, then prosecution witnesses. You'll probably testify tomorrow. Desmond and Sloan are being tried together but with separate juries. It's complicated, but just focus on telling the truth. At 8:55, she got a text. Her face went white. What I asked. Desmond posted bail 2 hours ago. Some hedge fund colleague put up the money. He's free until the trial. How is that legal? His lawyer argued he's not a flight risk. The judge granted it with conditions. Electronic monitoring, no contact with you, or an ease. She looked at me. He can't hurt you. You're safe. But I didn't feel safe. I felt exposed, hunted. At 9:00 a.m., we entered the courtroom. It was massive wood paneled with high ceilings that made every sound echo. The gallery was full. I saw former colleagues Caroline's family reporters filling notebooks. And at the defense table, Desmond, he wore a perfectly tailored navy suit. His hair was styled, his face composed. He looked like exactly what he was: a successful hedge fund manager, not a monster, not a murderer, just a normal man who tried to kill his mother for money. Our eyes met across the courtroom and he smiled. Not a big smile, just a small curve of his lips. Confident, amused. That smile triggered something. A memory I'd buried so deep I'd forgotten it existed. The night Gerald died, Desmond was 8 years old. I'd been making dinner when I heard the crash from the living room. Ran in to find Gerald on the floor, clutching his chest, face gray with pain. Call 911. I'd screamed at Desmond, but he just stood there in the doorway watching, not moving, not scared, just watching, and he'd smiled. That same small, curious smile, like he was observing an interesting experiment. I'd run for the phone myself, called the ambulance, tried CPR, while Desmond watched from the doorway with that smile. Gerald died before the ambulance arrived. I told myself later that I'd imagined the smile, that Desmond had been in shock, that children process trauma differently, that I'd misremembered in my grief. But I hadn't imagined it. That smile had been real, and I was seeing it again now 40 years later, in a courtroom where my son was on trial for trying to murder me the same way his father had died. A heart attack, sudden, unexpected, natural causes. Except Gerald's heart attack hadn't been natural, had it the thought hit me like lightning. No, impossible. Desmond had been 8 years old, a child he couldn't have. But the smile, that smile of curiosity and satisfaction as he watched his father die. I gripped Elizabeth's arm. His father, Gerald. I need to tell you something about the night he died. She looked at me sharply. What about it? Desmond was there? He watched and he smiled. We can't bring that up now. It's not relevant to this case and we have no proof of it. Establish his pattern. He's been doing this his whole life. Not just Caroline, not just me, his own father. Elizabeth's face went pale. Do you know what you're saying? I know exactly what I'm saying. My son has been killing for money since he was 8 years old. The judge entered. Everyone stood. The trial began. Opening statements were exactly what Elizabeth had prepared me for. The prosecution laid out the evidence methodically. Timeline texts, surveillance footage, and Ease's testimony. A clear, damning picture of premeditated murder. Then the defense Jacob Stern painted. Desmond as a loving son trapped in a stressful marriage, venting to his wife in ways that sounded bad out of context, but were never meant seriously. This is a family dispute, he told the jury. A mother who feels abandoned, a son who set healthy boundaries. The prosecution wants you to believe those boundaries constitute murder conspiracy. But where's the actual attempt? Where's the actual crime? My client invited his mother to dinner. That's not conspiracy. That's reconciliation. Sloane's attorney used the same strategy. Stressed woman. Bad jokes taken out of context. No actual crime committed. By lunch, I was shaking with rage. They were going to get away with it. The evidence was right there. And somehow these lawyers were making it sound reasonable. Elizabeth squeezed my shoulder. This is normal. Defense does their job, but we have a niece and we have the recordings. The jury will hear those and everything changes. That afternoon, Anise took the stand. She was terrified. I could see her hands shaking as she was sworn in. But when Elizabeth asked her to tell the court what she'd heard, her voice was steady. I was cleaning the upstairs hallway on December 1st, Mr. and Mrs. Callaway were in the master bedroom. The door was open. I heard them talking about Mrs. Callaway Sr., about having her for Christmas dinner. Then Mr. Callaway said something that made me stop. What did he say? He said, "It's the perfect opportunity. Heart attack would look natural. She's old on medication. No one would question it." The courtroom erupted. The judge banged his gavel. Desmond's face remained perfectly calm and continued describing what she'd heard, how she'd started recording subsequent conversations, how she'd finally gathered the courage to go to police. The defense cross-examined her brutally. "Ms. Rodriguez, you're here on a work visa, correct?" "Yes." "A visa that expires in 6 months?" "Yes." "And you've been offered witness protection, including help obtaining citizenship in exchange for your testimony?" "I was offered protection." "Yes. So you have a financial and legal incentive to lie." "I'm not lying. You're an undocumented worker being paid under the table, aren't you? You could be deported at any time. Isn't this testimony just a way to save yourself?" "No." In's voice broke. "I'm here because murder is wrong. Because I saw a photo of Mrs. Callaway and she looked like my mother and I couldn't let him hurt her." She was crying now, but her voice never wavered. I knew I would lose everything. My job, my home, maybe my family if I had to leave the country, but I couldn't stay silent. Some things are more important than safety. The courtroom was silent. Even the defense attorney looked uncomfortable. Next came Detective Reeves walking the jury through the surveillance evidence. Audio recordings of Desmond and Sloan discussing the plan in cold detail. The jury heard Desmond's voice. "Once she's dead, we're set for life. The old bat has no idea what's coming." They heard Sloan think you can cry convincingly. They heard Desmond. "I've been playing the grieving son my whole life." What's one more performance, several jury members looked sick. One woman was crying. Desmond sat perfectly still, face blank. Sloan was pale, hands clenched on the table. The evidence was damning undeniable, but trials don't always go the way they should. On day 3, Desmond took the stand in his own defense. It was a risk. Elizabeth had told me, "Most defendants don't testify because cross-examination is brutal." But Desmond had insisted. He thought he could charm the jury, and I saw now that he was trying to charm them, wearing a gray suit instead of navy, softer colors, speaking quietly, respectfully. "Tell us about your relationship with your mother," his attorney asked. "It's complicated." Desmond's voice was sad, resigned. "I love my mother. I do, but she's always been overbearing, suffocating. After my father died, she made me the center of her world, and that's a heavy burden for a child." I felt Elizabeth tense beside me. Growing up, I was her whole life, her purpose. She worked constantly, yes, but she also made sure I knew how much she sacrificed. Every day, every meal, every bill, she wanted gratitude worship. And when I tried to live my own life, have my own family, she couldn't let go. He was crying now, actual tears on his face. Last year, I finally set boundaries, told her I needed space. She didn't take it well, started calling obsessively, showing up at my office. I had to cut contact completely because she wouldn't respect my limits. And the dinner invitation, a mistake. My wife convinced me to try reconciliation. One more chance to have a relationship with my mother. But when a niece warned her away, my mother saw an opportunity, a way to punish me for rejecting her. So she fabricated this entire story. The jury was listening, some of them nodding. They believed him. The texts my wife and I exchanged, they sound bad out of context. I admit that, but they were jokes. Dark jokes. Yes, inappropriate, absolutely. But jokes. Married couples vent to each other. They say things they don't mean. We never actually plan to hurt anyone. Elizabeth's cross-examination was fierce. "Mr. Callaway, you say the texts were jokes. Let me read one to you. Got what we need from the pharmacy? She won't feel a thing. That's a joke. It sounds bad, but what pharmacy? What did you buy? I don't remember. You don't remember purchasing items you discussed in texts about killing your mother. I never purchased anything. That text was hypothetical. We have receipts. You bought Digitalis at a compounding pharmacy in Stamford on December 15th. Care to explain why for research for a book I'm writing? You're writing a book, considering it about murdering elderly women with heart medication, about medical thrillers. Yes, it went on like that for hours. Desmond had an answer for everything. Weak answers, implausible answers, but answers. And some of the jury believed him. I could see it in their faces, doubt creeping in. Then Elizabeth played her final card. Mr. Callaway, tell the court about your first wife. His face went white. That's not relevant to Caroline Brennan's. You were married to her 15 years ago. She died of a drug overdose. You inherited $500,000. Did you murder her? Objection. His attorney was on his feet, irrelevant and prejudicial, and it goes to pattern your honor, Elizabeth said calmly. The judge considered. I'll allow it, but carefully, counselor. Elizabeth turned back to Desmond. Did you murder Caroline? No, she died of an accidental overdose. I was cleared by the police, cleared because there wasn't enough evidence. But her family always suspected you didn't. They. Her family was grieving. They needed someone to blame. And now your mother is here very much alive because a maid warned her making similar accusations. Quite a coincidence. Desmond said nothing. His mask had cracked. I saw rage flicker across his face before he controlled it. Elizabeth sat down. No further questions. The next day I took the stand. I'd practiced this, knew what to expect. But sitting in that witness box with Desmond staring at me from 15 FT away was harder than any rehearsal. Elizabeth took me through my testimony gently. My background as a nurse, raising Desmond alone the year of silence. The Christmas invitation, Inese's warning. Tell the jury what you felt when the maid stopped you, Elizabeth said, confused. Then scared, she was terrified, and I didn't understand why, but I trusted her. Something in her eyes made me believe her. And when Detective Reeves called, told you about the poison plot, what did you feel? Like my heart had stopped, like the world had ended. This was my son, my child. I'd given him everything, and he wanted me dead for money I didn't even know I had. Do you still love him? The question caught me off guard. I looked at Desmond. His face was carefully neutral, but his eyes were cold, empty. I love the child I raised, I said slowly. I love the boy who cried when he scraped his knee, who hugged me when he was scared. But that boy is gone. The man sitting at that table is a stranger who shares my DNA. Desmond's jaw tightened. Good. Let him be angry. Let the jury see. Then Jacob Stern cross-examined me. Mrs. Callaway, you said you work long hours raising your son. Double shifts, overnight shifts. How many hours per week? 60, sometimes 70. Who watched Desmond when you were gone? Babysitters, neighbors. He was a latchkey kid sometimes. A latchkey kid, so he spent much of his childhood alone. I had to work. We needed money for food, rent, his education. Of course. But being alone so much, don't you think that might have affected him, made him feel abandoned? I did my best. I'm sure you did. But best doesn't always mean good enough, does it? Elizabeth objected. The judge sustained, but the damage was done. The jury had heard it. Stern continued. When Desmond went to Yale, you took out significant loans to pay tuition. Loans you couldn't afford. Didn't that create resentment? I wanted him to have opportunities I never had. But you made sure he knew about those loans, didn't you? Made sure he understood what you'd sacrificed. I never. You sent him your loan statements. We have copies, monthly reminders of what he owed you. I felt my face flush. I'd sent those statements because I'd needed him to co-sign some paperwork. Not to guilt him, but it looked bad. Stern pressed. Isn't it true you were bitter when Desmond married Sloane jealous that she came from money? No. You wore the wrong dress to their wedding. Desmond had to tell you to change. Do you remember that I wore what I could afford? He was embarrassed of me. Or you deliberately wore something inappropriate to embarrass him. That's not true, Mrs. Callaway. Isn't this entire accusation just revenge for being pushed out of your son's life? No. He tried to kill me. That's not revenge. It's fact. Or is it an elderly woman's desperate attempt to stay relevant to punish the son who outgrew her? I wanted to scream, wanted to rage at him. But I remembered Elizabeth's coaching. Ice be ice. I'm not lying, I said calmly. And Rodriguez isn't lying. The evidence isn't lying. My son planned to murder me for $2.3 million. That's the truth. Stern stared at me for a long moment, then sat down. Elizabeth did redirect cleaning up the damage, but I could see some jury members looked uncertain, questioning. The trial lasted 8 more days. Expert witnesses on poisons, financial experts on Desmond's debts, character witnesses on both sides, finally closing arguments. The prosecution was powerful. Elizabeth laid out the timeline, the evidence, the pattern. 2 women, both worth money to Desmond, both nearly or actually dead. The digitalis purchased the texts, the audio recordings, In's bravery. This isn't a bitter mother making things up, she told the jury. This is attempted murder, plain and simple. And if Anise Rodriguez hadn't risked everything to warn Mrs. Callaway, we'd be prosecuting an actual murder right now. The defense played their cards. Stressed family misinterpreted texts. No actual crime committed, reasonable doubt. The jury deliberated for 3 hours. When they filed back in, I couldn't breathe. Elizabeth held my hand. The foreman stood on the charge of conspiracy to commit murder. How do you find the defendant, Desmond Callaway? Guilty. The courtroom erupted. I heard someone sobbing, realized it was me. Sloane's jury came back guilty as well, both of them convicted. Desmond's head dropped. Then he raised it and looked directly at me. The mask was gone. Pure rage twisted his face. He lunged toward me, guards grabbing him, but not before he screamed across the courtroom. You should have died and given me what's mine. You ruined my life. Baves dragged him away, still screaming. Everything would have been fine if you just died. All of it. You destroyed everything. The truth. Finally. No charm. No manipulation, just rage that his victim had survived. Caroline's sister was crying in the front row. Thank you, she mouthed at me. Thank you. The judge set sentencing for 3 weeks later. Both Desmond and Sloane received 15 years with possibility of parole. Appeals were immediately filed, but they lost every appeal denied. My son was going to prison, and I was free. 6 months later, I sat in Michael Chen's office signing paperwork. The Callaway Nursing Scholarship Fund, 2.3 million fully endowed income-based students, only with single mothers getting priority. Named after Gerald, not Desmond. The first recipients had already been chosen. 10 nursing students who would get full tuition books and living expenses. Women who were working 3 jobs and raising kids alone and still somehow keeping their grades up. Women like Idbin, one of them, was In Rodriguez. After the trial, she'd gotten her citizenship applied to nursing school, was starting at Yale in the fall. Because of you, I told her when she came to my new house to tell me the news. No, she said firmly, because of us. I'd sold the Bridgeport apartment and bought a small house in New Haven. 2 bedrooms, one for me and one for guests. A garden and back room to breathe. I volunteered at a women's shelter twice a week. Spoke at community centers about elder abuse. Helped other people recognize the signs I'd missed for so long. Not all children are safe, I told them. Not all love is returned. Sometimes the people we create become strangers, and that's not our failure. The money Desmond had wanted so badly was saving lives instead of buying his freedom. It felt right. It felt like justice, not the loud kind that comes from courts and trials, the quiet kind, the thorough kind, the kind that changes futures instead of just punishing the past. Christmas Eve came again exactly 1 year after everything changed. I'd invited people to my new house for dinner, not family by blood, but family by choice. And her mother, who'd finally gotten to visit from Mexico, 3 of the scholarship students, Detective Reeves and Officer Phillips, Michael, Chen, Elizabeth Park people who'd shown up when I needed them, people who'd chosen to care. We gathered around my table much smaller than Desmond's and ate food I'd cooked myself. Simple food, good food, the kind that tastes like home. Someone asked the question I'd been waiting for. Do you ever think about him? About Desmond, I set down my fork and considered. Every day I think about the son I imagined I had.